Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of our speedrun walkthrough tutorial, things you need to be aware about when starting out speedrunning this game. We went over the cruise ship last week, as well as a couple of just general information pieces that you need to know about and be aware of. So if you missed that, please go back and check it out, because there may be things that I don't retouch on or explain in today's video, because there's a lot of really important things to keep in mind when you are going through the raft. And one of the big things that we'll need to talk about is some of the distinctions between a new game and new game plus run. Because the new game run does require you looking for a couple of things that are only available when you're very first playing through the game and can really make things a lot easier for you. And that just has to do with some of the unlockables, things that you can gain while you are waiting for any of the rank up materials that you're going to need in order to really excel at this portion of the playthrough. Now, right off the bat, in any version of the speedrun that you're doing, you're going to be here in this holding cell. And something unique about this holding cell is it has this synergy wall, which you will need to interact with in a new game run, and if you are playing New Game Plus, then you just have the synergy wall available here. But this is the only mandatory synergy area that you have to interact with in order to progress through the run. And it is going to differ based off of what team members you have equipped at time. So you'll just need to be aware of what synergies are going to be required of you as you seek to make your way past this. Now, I know that Nightcrawler has one of these synergies that we're looking for, and apparently I am positioned in such a way that I can't get the synergy with Doctor Doom in order to get that. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to Doctor Doom, because that's another thing that's really kind of interesting, is a lot of these synergies are directional and you have to be aware of what you're doing. Now, in a new game run, you will not have access to Nightcrawler this early on, and so you will need to keep an eye on this map in the top bit and run around with characters at ground speed. But if you are playing new game, you will have access to this. And there is a bit of a red herring here, where you're going to be led towards this terminal, but this is not powered, so you can't get through it. And you will need to know that out of this holding cell, you need to take an immediate left, so you can come down here to these terminals and activate things. There's one terminal over here, and with teleporting characters, there is a terminal that is a quick teleport away. And when you have restored power to this cell block, you will be reset to your default formation, and so you'll need to be aware of that. So if you have Nightcrawler in your secondary position, then he's going to be over here. I've had that mistake happen before, and that means that you're going to catch yourself on this wall if you're not careful. But from here, you just need to make sure that you go down to the end of the hallway, interact with this button, and as soon as you walk through that door, you're going to trigger the next cutscene. We went over cutscene skipping in the last video and how to really get away from that, so I'm not going to rehash it here. But in this section, you have a mandatory combat section based off of the prisoners that are in this cell block. And with it being a New Game Plus run, you should be able to get through this fight fairly quickly. The New Game run can take a little bit of extra time. You just need to be aware of what methods are best to go about when attacking into your opponents. Now, along the way, there will be a couple of these crates that pop up in these areas, but there are certain crates that you will want to target in a new game run as opposed to other runs. And this is not one of them, but I did want to point it out because there will be two here in the raft that you will want to prioritize when going for a new game run. So just be aware of those crates and the goods that you can get out of them. I don't have in front of me what is contained within those crates, but I have made a list of which crates have the most beneficial loot contained within them in a new game run specifically. Activating that door will cause you to activate the next cutscene, which again, we're going to skip through here because we've already seen it. And this is another one of those mandatory fight sections that can take a little bit of extra time, especially if you are in a new game run, just because there are 3 different waves of opponents to get that mandatory 33 opponents that you need to take out in order to make your way through this section of the fight. If you're in a new game plus run, I do recommend using Thanos Infinite's Soul Siphon, specifically the fully charged variety, and that will pull all of these opponents into one centralized location where you can then get ahead of them very quickly and get through this fight in a much quicker fashion than what you've done before. Again, there is a section here that you'll want to continue through. The branching paths that have the ramps that go up will take you into the next section. And then we are into the Sandman Fight. And with a new game run, again, you just want to get as much damage in on this boss as you can. And with either version of the run, you're going to want to fight him using these suppression cannons. And you will want to keep an eye on the attacks that Sandman is throwing out. And when he launches those sand streams at you, or he punches down into the ground, or throws those lines up along the ground at you, you will just need to time it and roll out of the way, because it is going to take out a large section of your health. Now, you will have to go through that section multiple times in a new game run, but if you're in New Game Plus, then you will be able to get through that fight in one singular cycle, because it is a very easy fight, all things considered. And especially if you are using the Black Panther strategy, where you outfit him with the trade-off ISO, where he saps his health based off of the damage that he deals, that is going to allow you to get through this fight even faster. But after skipping through this cutscene in a new game run, you will be given access to a wide selection of characters. And there's not a whole lot of characters that I really recommend picking up here, but any of them will be good for a New Game Plus run. I generally keep Gamora on the team for a brief period of time, but I really like picking up Hulk here because he is a phenomenal resource when it comes to getting through a couple of the hairier areas later on in the game. He's not as important in the New Game Plus run anymore, but he's still a very powerful and viable option. I also like switching Captain America onto the team because he does very well with crowd control type abilities. And if you do want to try and work strategies of using his Super Soldier's enhancement ability once he gets up to level 20, that has some benefit and payoff as well. I also really like using Wolverine because he has abilities that are rinse and repeatable, specifically his Adamantium Assault, where he will uppercut his opponents and then you can chain a falling aerial back on top of that. Those are the 3 characters that I tend to switch onto my team here, though I have had success with both Thor and Captain Marvel switching onto the team here as well. Again, those are just some points for the New Game run as opposed to the New Game Plus run. If you're playing New Game Plus, you are going to keep the same team the entire run through. In order to progress past this point, once you have talked to Nick Fury, you can skip the dialogue options here in the mandatory section by hitting the X button, and then you will gain access to the shield icon where you can make those adjustments to your team if you are playing in the New Game Plus run. But from here, you'll just want to continue further into the cell block, activate this door, which is going to allow you to come up here. This is another one of those sections that is not a mandatory fighting section, and if you make your way here in this puzzle, then you just need to make sure that you can get through the different laser grids as they pop up and available. I really like to do something special here to avoid this laser grid, because as soon as you go through this threshold, you are going to end up in a laser grid that is a little bit trickier to navigate. And so what I like to do with Nightcrawler, and you can only do this with teleporting characters specifically, but with Nightcrawler I like to teleport around this laser grid here at the very start if I can. I messed that up, but if you get a correct angle on it, you can get through the laser grid and not have to deal with it here, because it can be tricky to get through if you don't time things correctly. And then here again, you can quickly clip through that, and the rest of your team will just kind of make their way through that laser grid, but you have to get through it directly. An alternate option for getting through that laser grid, not having to wait for the timing on it, is you can use characters like Thing or Colossus. In the New Game Plus run specifically is where I'm talking about that, because they have abilities that allow them to move right through those type of environmental hazards without any issues or troubles. Now, I mentioned that there is a box that we're going to want to grab, and it is in this room. It's not apparent as to where it is unless you're familiar with the layout, but if you come back here, there is a panel that you can interact with that will then open up a door and grant you access to a resource crate. Of course, you don't see what's in it here in a New Game Plus category because I've already collected the loot out of it, but there is a really valuable resource located here for the New Game run that you will want to make sure that you pick up before you continue beyond this point. From here, we'll now want to move along to the first puzzle room, which isn't much of a puzzle. All you need to do is go into the center cell, hit the interact button, and then you'll need to switch off to any other member of your team that is not located within this cell block with you and make your way over to the exit. If you're playing New Game Plus at that point, you can then switch back over to Nightcrawler because you can use him to jump past all of these opponents here, because this is another section where the combat is non-mandatory, and then make your way down here into the Venom Electro fight. Again, there's a cutscene that you can skip out here, and then it's just a matter of attacking into these mini-bosses as they come around. Now, Electro can be a little bit annoying in this much of a confined space, because he can zip around, he can stagger you out, and Venom is up there on the wall shooting out his symbiote sludge onto the ground, which will slow you down if you get caught up in it. And with this portion of the fight where they are fused together, you're not going to get a lot of damage in because he's fairly resistant, more specifically again in the New Game run. But if you are in the New Game Plus run, you'll be able to overpower him. If not, you will want to kind of hover over these exposed wires to trigger the sound system, which will fully stun him just naturally over the course of the fight. We can skip past this portion here and on through the next little area, which does take us into a mandatory combat section. This is where Luke Cage is introduced, and he is powerful. I really like him quite a bit. I haven't found any practicality in using him on a team, unfortunately. So in this section, you'll just need to fight through the 16 opponents that are located within this holding cell as they come around. And if you are playing New Game Plus again with Thanos Infinite, you can use the Soul Siphon to gravitate all of your opponents into one central area right here in the center of this arena. And that will allow you to pull them into a point where you don't have to go chasing after them. Moving past this section, we are going to get into the Mysterio Fight after another puzzle room. Now, I like to think of this as a number pad on a phone, not a number pad on your keyboard. And when I say this sequence, this is the best way for you to get through this in the shortest amount of time. So assuming that the top left-hand corner is the number 1, the bottom right-hand corner is the number 9, you will want to interact with the terminals in this order. You will want to go 9, 8, 7, and then run all the way over to 6, activate that terminal, and that's going to get you through here in a manner that conserves a lot of time. And that is the most direct path that you can get through there. You'll then need to interact with this terminal, and go through this small little hallway, interact with this terminal. That is what brings you into the Mysterio fight. Now, there's a bunch of cutscenes in the middle of this fight that you can skip and things that you need to be aware of with that. And what you'll need to try and do is get all of these characters down as low as you can, or to that first stagger point, in order to trigger this cutscene, which as soon as you're aware that it's happening, you can skip through it as well. And then with a lot of these fights in the New Game Plus category, you can typically get them to a point where you can stagger them all out simultaneously. Apart from that, you will want to make your way through this fight as quickly as you can and focus down whichever characters. There's not really a preferred order that I like to go through, just whoever I am closest to and is not blipping in and out. Spider-Gwen tends to be the biggest problem causer with that because she can teleport in and around the battlefield with one of her abilities. From here, you will get reset back to the other side of the arena when Mysterio appears, and you'll want to chase him down as quickly as you can. Now, he has this ability where he kind of charges things up, and that can be particularly problematic when you are in a new game run because he has a large concussive blast that will cause a lot of problems for your entire team. But as long as you're familiar with his attack patterns and you can stagger him out, you don't have a whole lot to worry about. Another cutscene you can skip through there, and then we will progress on to the lower sections of the RAFT. We have a mandatory fight here in this courtyard, and if you are in the New Game Plus run, again, the best thing that you can do with Thanos Infinite is set up this fully charged Soul Siphon, draw all of the opponents into one central location here, and you can attack into them to help it go a little bit faster. Now, I have had on one instance and one instance only, I've had a glitch happen where I've had an opponent that gets stuck up on this balcony, and it actually looks like we've just so happened to get this glitch to happen again, because he has not jumped down into this round of combat. And if we were to retreat, he would just not be able to make it over that. That is unfortunate if it happens to you. In this instance, you have a way of getting around it by having Thanos on your team by using this attack that allows him to summon a bunch of those reality spires up underneath him, and you can even hit those opponents from down here on the ground. That is one of the risks that you have to be aware of when using the Soul Siphon. It doesn't happen very frequently, but you can glitch out characters to the point where they do not jump down. This particularly becomes a point of concern when you get into Hell, in the later section of the speedrun, because in that section you cannot access the characters that get stuck up on the terraces that they jump down from. So be mindful of that when you go through it. But we'll continue on here in order of where we need to go to. We'll take a hard left onto this elevator. And it really doesn't matter what you do here, because you are just going to have to wait for your character, for the elevator to get to its destination. I like trying to get a little bit of a dash dance glitch to happen with my characters. You saw it there for a second, but a big thing that you need to be aware of is if you're waiting here on the edge of this elevator, you will get teleported back to the other side of it once it reaches its destination. It's a really glitched bit that only happens if you're standing right up next to the gate. If you're anywhere back here, you don't tend to have that happen. Anyway, we'll want to make our way into the Dr. Octopus fight, skip this cutscene. Dr. Octopus fight is fairly straightforward, nothing super crazy that you need to be aware of, except for the fact that he does have a couple of his charge attacks that he runs around the arena in, and that can be particularly annoying when you're fighting against him in a new game run. But you'll then just want to make your way down to this platform, or this elevator again, to trigger the next section of the boss fight. Now with this section, he is going to have his different tentacled arms in the different corners of the platform. You'll want to attack into them to deplete his stagger gauge and place him in a vulnerable state where he will then fall down onto the ground and you can attack into him. Again, using Black Panther is really good in the New Game Plus game or portion. In the New Game aspect of this, I typically like using my extreme attacks to finish out that attack or that section of the fight once we get to it, because it does do a much better job at cleaning him out. Now we'll skip through this cutscene. That brings us to the final boss fight of this section of the run. That is the Green Goblin fight, which takes place on the other end of this. Now, unlike the previous elevator ride, you can wait at the gates of this elevator and not have any sort of glitch take place. And with this fight in the New Game Plus run, you can just walk straight up to him and hit him. But in the New Game run, you will want to focus on throwing these bombs into him in order to get him down to or stagger him to the point where you can then attack into him. Attacking into him once he is stunned is the better method of doing it, as opposed to throwing those pumpkin bombs back at him. And the best method of getting this to work in your favor comes with lining up the arrow in front of your character with your opponent and then throwing the pumpkin bomb into them. And you saw that right there with this attack, and it's a very, very specific in terms of the placement for that. But you can blitz through this a lot faster in a New Game Plus by just attacking into him directly, as opposed to using his bombs to get through that fight. It is required to use this or complete this fight the way that it's intended in a New Game run, because you just don't have the damage output to quickly sweep through it, because he is fairly resistant to damage when he's in that state. There's a couple of cutscenes that you can skip here, and there are a few cutscenes that are back-to-back right here. You skip one, and then you're immediately fed another one, so you'll have to skip two of them back-to-back. And then the last thing that you will need to do is come back over here to Nick Fury. You'll talk to him, and upon hitting the X button to skip his dialogue, that will activate the next cutscene, which moves you into the next portion of the game, which is Shadowland, and we will be covering that next week. But I hope that today's video served as being very informational and helpful to you. This is one of the longer stretches of the game that has a lot of technicalities included within it. So please let me know if you feel like there's anything that I missed or something I should have been clearer on. I would love to clear that up in a comment to make sure that you are helped along as best you can. Thanks so much for your time. Again, if you made it this far into the video, make sure that you subscribe for that daily variety content, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.